You led us to the trough and I wasn't able to drink.
I'll tell you what my drug is then. So my drug is actually coal tar. Just pausing for a little reaction there.
You're gonna have to go some now.
I thought you might say that. So I have selected this for a number of reasons. So number one was for its history. So it was discovered in 1665. Thank you, Wikipedia, and used for medicinal purposes since the 19th century. It is derived from coal, as its name suggests, and I'm a descendant of miners, so there's a tenuous link there. Number two is for those who love chemistry, and Paul, I remember you saying that you really love chemistry after explaining about aspirin in the first episode. So coal tar has a really complex structure with lots of pretty aromatic hydrocarbons. Chemistry is not my forte, but I can appreciate a pretty structure. Number three is pharmaceutically, it has got lots of properties. So it's antifungal, it's anti-inflammatory, it's anti-itching, and arguably antiparasitic. So it's used in psoriasis and lots of other skin conditions. And the fourth reason, and the final reason, and this is the main reason, just saying coal tar brings back that smell like it was yesterday that you were making coal tar in Lasses paste or other pharmaceutical products in what would now be shipped off to a specials manufacturer. And I loved getting a script for something that you actually had to make. So you had to use a number of skills like accuracy, and coal tar just takes me back to the start of my career in pharmacy before health and safety regulations are as advanced as they are now. And I'm fairly sure anyone who was around pre the peppermint water case will also remember making up a variety of products in the back of the pharmacy. So I'd like to submit it for old time's sake.
We crashed with convention and jump in here because all three of us are jumping about in our seats really excitedly because we can all remember. I think that's a brilliant choice, Sam, because my pre-reg was in a town called Merthyr Tydfil, which many of you will have heard of, and that's an old mining community. And we used to have some weird and wonderful recipes. I think coal tar was pretty much in everything, and I can remember that. It was one of the first jobs I was always asked to do was slap together coal tar and salicylic acid ointment, was it? I think you handle coal tar with care these days, don't you? Whereas we used to just slap it about in the dispensary while we were dispensing, at the same time we'd be dispensing scripts. So I always used to get the job of making that cream, and I think I could still make it today, the old figure of eight and that sort of stuff. So that's a brilliant, you've reawakened a brilliant memory.
The figure of eight with a palette knife.
That's it.
On a heated tray.
I know, on a white tile.
You were lucky.
In Yorkshire, what did they do in Yorkshire? Hey, that's brilliant. We'll definitely take that into the Desert Island Drug Oral Apothecary list. Fantastic. We love that. Coal tar. So what about a career anthem then, Sam?
Again, difficult to decide on something. A bit like Ravi last week, some of the song choices that I would have might not have appropriate lyrics. So the song that I've chosen is Can't Hold Us Down by Christina Aguilera. And the reason that I've chosen that is because it came out in the same year that I moved to London. So that was my foundation years as a pharmacy technician. So lots of kind of going out, there's various songs that I could pick. But that particular one, if you listen to the lyrics, are about women being able to speak up and the backlash we get when we do. And that can equally be applied to pharmacy technicians. Also, it's a tune and it's a little bit edgy. And I know you guys like edgy.
It's our middle name.
Yeah, absolutely. It is a tune. I've heard of that. Yeah.
I think it's the most contemporary choice we've had as well. And it's probably 15 years old, but I think it's the most recent.
Yeah, you're right, actually. It probably is the most recent that's been picked, actually.
That's a great song. It's a great tune.
Well, we like it. It's about evoking personal memories and personal passion.
And stories.
Stories, indeed. We'll definitely take that into the Oral Apothecary Spotify playlist. And last of all then, Sam, what about something for the library?
So my book is Lean In by Sheryl Sandberg, and that's from about 2013. So it's quite old now, but I wish I had received similar advice at the start of my career. So it's a book that really helps to open my eyes about systemic gender bias and how to be bold in the world of work. I read a lot of autobiographies, particularly by women, and this one really kind of made me recognise the importance of having role models who look like us, about mentoring and being mentored, challenging inequality in all its forms, and providing a platform for those who are coming up behind us. To be fair, there have been criticisms of that book, but as with any other information that we read, we need to perform our own critical analysis. But my take-home messages from it were that society and the media condition us to think and act in a certain way. The world is biased, it's unfair, and it's built on foundations that oppress various groups of people. So unless we become more self-aware and educated about these issues, then we'll perpetuate them. So we need to be vocal, we need to call out social injustice, and we need to start doing the work to dismantle the barriers so that the next generation can build on them.
It's very pertinent, isn't it? Because I think it was either this week or last week where the big NHS inclusion and diversity document in pharmaceutical, I assume it was pharmacy technicians and pharmacists.
It's an English document, I think. So.
It is in England, yeah, that's right. So you and I are in England, those boys are in Wales. Yeah, so it's very pertinent in that sense, isn't it? And it's exactly what Claire talked to us about in episode 2.
And the book recommendation that Claire gave is a fantastic recommendation. So I think having the podcast with the playlist is great, but also having something where we can see the library would be really good as well, because there've been some great book recommendations.
So we're going for a tent at the Hay Literary Festival in subsequent years. Okay, so people will be able to come into the Oral Apothecary tent and the library will be there for all.
Okay, and so that's Lean In by Sheryl Sandberg.
In the show notes, there is a link to we've got a page on Goodreads with all the books on. If you ever want to know the books, check that out as well.
Thank you.
Gimmo next with our micro discussion.
So wanted to talk today, and it touches on some of the themes we've come on in the past. I spotted this on Twitter and I thought it was interesting. It was a retweet by the Academy of Fabulous Stuff. I don't know if anyone's ever looked at them or followed them, but
Roy Lilly.
But it comes from Roy Lilly's stable, and I think it's essentially a website he set up to share interesting and good practice. The one that caught my eye was Remote Medicines Management Service Improves Health Outcomes. So this is a service, and I'm not sure if I pronounced this right, Parman was developed by a Stockport-based medication support company, and they're trialling it in Liverpool. And it's an internet-based remote medicines management service. And basically, I've looked into it a bit more. It's a system whereby people in their own homes are given a web-enabled webcam that then connects to a pharmacist who observes them taking their medicines and takes their medicines. Their claim is that 97% of people using it take their medicines correctly, and replacing carer visits with the Parman system has reduced costs by 80%. So this is the claims on the website. This isn't actually a research paper, it's a case study if you like, but it's reflective, I think, of some of the things that we've been talking about in the past, and some of the things that we're seeing in COVID, isn't it, is much more of a move onto online services. So I thought this was an interesting one. I thought it might interest you, Sam, because I know in Wales, and I think it's happening elsewhere, we've got similar things being done by pharmacy technicians going into people's homes and doing this sort of thing. It's an interesting concept. I've got some views on it, which I'll maybe talk about later. Wonder what you all thought.
I have thoughts on it. So I think it's great in terms of advances in technology, and that we should move towards more innovative practice. And it seems to have, I did have a look at the paper, and I think it does seem to have had a really big impact socially, in particular for loneliness. So it wasn't just used for medication management, I understand. So in the benefits realisation paper, it talks about the loneliness aspect, and it also talks about what you described in the first episode about failure demands, thinking about the gaps that information falls into between care settings, so that interface. So if it resolves those, that's great. But I would just say to take it with a pinch of salt until you've read the full benefits realisation paper, because within that, there's some big caveat. As with lots of these papers, they've extrapolated the information so that the costs that they've put in there are kind of from the data that they've got. And I would say that their sample size is not huge.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. But I think we are all agreeing that in reality, this is the future, isn't it? Something like this is the future. So I had a look at the video as well. I immediately thought to myself, this is surely a perfect job for a pharmacy technician, possibly other forms of health professionals as well, because I know a long time ago when I worked elsewhere, this was going on, obviously not with this technology, but they had pharmacists, pharmacy technicians, dietitians, physios, OTs, and they all were taught enough about each of their subjects so that whoever was going into the person's house could actually identify the biggest issues, and then if it needed a specialist, then they would refer them. It would seem like it would be quite cost intensive, wouldn't it, to have a pharmacist sat on the end of a video phone giving this. But if you look at the example, and that this is no word of a lie, the very last person that I had to deal with this afternoon was a lady who's just been discharged. She's just been given a diagnosis where she requires morphine, and she's got Parkinson's disease, and she is not secure or safe to measure out the morphine dose to have overnight because of her Parkinson's disease. And my question to me at the end of the phone at 5:30 was, how do we sort out for somebody to go and actually check that she's got the right amount of morphine so that she doesn't overdose? Now, something like this with a video could actually help achieve that, couldn't it? To check that they've got the right amount if you were using a syringe. They still need the physical dexterity to be able to do it. And the person on the end of the phone, like they said, they seem to know them. So they would say, hello, Sam, thanks for ringing again. And yes, I've taken the right dose. And that's the loneliness part of it as well, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it's good in terms of like multidisciplinary team being able to work together as well, a bit like you say. So if you think about the PCN model, again, in England, I think paramedics now working alongside nurses, working alongside pharmacy technicians, pharmacists, etc. So it comes back to something you mentioned. I can't remember which episode it was. My superfan status.
Superfan, you're
declining.
really are a superfan.
But you were talking about healthcare professionals in other countries. So in Scandinavia, for example, they do 2 years training and everybody does the same training and then they specialise. And this would lend itself to something like that because it's then, like you say, you triage to the most appropriate person for whatever the person's needs are.
I mean, I just come in. It does link to the DTB article that we discussed when Mark Talbot was on. Yeah, Mark Talbot was on the pod. How do your patients use their medicines at home and why is it important? And they were just lifting the lid on that we spend an awful lot of time on the medicine safety side of things with high risk drugs and high risk situations, but actually, as Steve has just said, the sort of the everyday medicine queries that can then turn into something quite complex with when you put that layer of life on top. I just wanted to say, whenever I see the adherence discussion, the medicines adherence, there is something missing, and I think we've missed it on the whole series actually, so we need to address it in series 2, and that's the whole thing around shared decision making. A lot of these adherents are aimed at helping people take their medicines. We've missed out on that conversation. Should they be on these medicines in the first place? And has there been true shared decision making in place before we go full blast on, helping people to take them?
And nothing that irates me more than somebody asking me, how do we fix this? When I say the answer's easy. They shouldn't even be on this medication.
Yeah, and I think related to that, Jamie, I have a slight unease in general terms about how we're suddenly seeing technology as an easy solution to lots of these problems without really thinking it through. The video was good, but there's also something about it, about someone sat at home in their chair and talking to a speaker and they can't see the pharmacist's face. We're pushing people towards video consultations with GPs, whether they want them or not. That's happening with pharmacists, and there are huge benefits to it, but this old person in the future is sat at home, wired up to a computer, talking to a speaker and isn't seeing anybody. Quite easily find ourselves in a place. I'm probably being a bit Neil from the young ones in terms of techno fear, but I guess we just got to be careful because it's an easy solution at the moment to the workforce issue, isn't it, without actually addressing the issue.
I think it's got lots of positives in terms of the fact that it is COVID secure for both parties.
I agree. I'm not saying it's not a good idea. It's just it's like a little niggle at the back of my mind about the direction that we're taking. We just have to be careful, I think.
I think also thinking about inequalities that we might not have thought of by introducing things like this. So the digital literacy of people within this particular project, I think the technology was provided to those individuals and they would have been shown how to use it. Is that realistic to be able to roll it out on a mass scale? Maybe, maybe not. So I think it's just, thinking about the things that you might not have thought through.
You might find that lots of relatives are already doing this anyway. Okay, very good. Thank you for that. And thanks, Sam, for your comments on the micro discussion. We've got people listening in Canada, Spain, the Netherlands, Belgium, France, Australia, New Zealand, Singapore, and the States.
How do you know that?
Because we've had feedback from all places.
I thought you'd upgraded the subscription.
Yeah, no.
So did I.
No. We've had feedback from all places. But importantly, look, our UK audience took us all the way to the Apple Top 10 for medical podcasts in Great Britain. So a massive thank you to all our listeners for all your support and your words of encouragement. Thank you very much. Okay, over to Gimmo now.
Just to add in my thanks, 556 followers on Twitter, 2,668 downloads. I think our target was 50. So, as I said, tough times for everybody. It's been good for us to do this, and I hope you've enjoyed it too. I was going to finish off this week with a little bit of a quiz. It's based on our formulary. So we're on our desert island. We've started to build up a formulary now. So this is going to test your prescribing skills.
We're crazy,
also,
aren't we?
For you superfans out there, your knowledge of the drugs that have gone into the